Hello everybody, this is Mr. Octanet, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about a few pins I've come across in, Pinterest, which are all correlate to writing. Now, here's something you probably wouldn't know of if you just looked at my gameplay videos. I am an amateur writer. Not fanfiction, if you're wondering, although I do have there are certain things that I would like to write fanfiction for, although not the usual things you would think. But all of that aside, I've come across quite a few interesting pins on Pinterest that I wanted to share and kind of talk about. So, first one over here, talking about description. Small physical things that give your character's personality, how they smile, volume of speech, if they're verbal, how much eye contact do they make. Essentially, this is something that's kind of learned, it's kind of one of those things that you read about it, but you still kind of need to learn how to actually practice it. It's not something you can easily develop muscle memory for. It's something you kind of need to keep in the back of your mind and think about every once in a while. Kind of the idea of, obviously you can't just rely on physical, well, this is physical description, but I mean not just, the actual shape of the person, right? Not just the facial features or the body shape. With the right words, you can very easily give a decent enough image of what your character looks like, and your reader can, from there, fill in, right? But this is more or less talking about this is how you actually show their personality, right? Obviously, body shape and facial features can also show personality depending on how you write it, but this is a much more kind of reliable way, so to speak, of showing personality, Nervous tics, right? What does your character do when he is kind of mulling over something? Like one character in something that I'm writing who, even though he is not really religious, he has this kind of talisman around his neck that he always fiddles with. Or the sound of their footsteps, is your character someone who stomps around, or is he kind of tiptoe-ish, very quiet, doesn't like to be seen, prefers to keep his head down and not raise attention to himself. Again, these are all things you kind of have to keep in the back of their mind. They're not things you're gonna they're not things you're gonna have muscle memory for. As you're developing your character, these are all things that you're gonna have to kind of figure out as you go along. At least in my experience. There's kind of another thing that you kind of actually with this you can kind of develop a sort of muscle memory for it, and that is, that every character should have like a goal in any given situation, as this talks about, even if it's something as simple as, hey, I don't want to be in this conversation, I just want to go to the fridge and take out a drink, right? Something as simple as that is a goal that kind of shows the current mental state of your character, its personality, to a certain extent. Obviously this is someone who doesn't like confrontation or doesn't care too much about the current situation. He just wants his drink, right? Or if we're talking about a more serious or more kind of driven character, their goal could be, to them, everything has to lead to their goal, So you can say, well, this character doesn't want to be in this conversation because it's just a waste of time. Or if he's an especially intelligent character, he somehow finds a way to pull it over to his side, kind of take advantage of the conversation to further his own goals. These are all things that, the ins and outs of your character, you can really go ham with this, And that's kind of one of the big things that I've learned, is that the more you know about your character, the more more effective your writing is, right? The more you know about your character, the more you understand about him, the more effective your writing is. That might sound weird because, you created the character, right? So obviously you should know, you would think that you know everything about him, but chances are you don't. A lot of the time, when I'm writing characters, I kind of go through themes, right? I think about a theme, first of all, someone who's more of a punk, more of a brute, who's more brain than brawn, I think about themes. I start from that, then I think about, okay, appearance, whether he is, skinny, fat, short, whatever. And then from there, I kind of try to figure out personality. Okay, how does he get to this point, right? I kind of reverse engineer a lot of my characters. I don't start with the beginning. I start with what they are now, and then go back from there to kind of figure out what would create this sort of person, what would create this personality. So that's how I do it. Your writing method will be different, but yeah. This kind of goes more into character relationships, right? This is kind of another thing that there's something you have to plan beforehand, or it's something you kind of have to figure out on the go. Relationships. Who's friends with who's romantically interested in one, who's not interested in another, who puts up with who doesn't put up with the other. These are all kind of things you have to plan on beforehand. But this obviously talks about friendships. And I really enjoy writing friendships, right? Friendships have, thing about friendships, depending on how well you write them, they can actually bring out the most, can kind of tell the most about each other's characters because because thinking about friendships, strong friendships. A lot of time, as this talks about, strong friendships, the two characters kind of know a lot about each other, right? They know their quirks, they know their weaknesses, they know kind of what's taboo to talk about and what's something that they always talk about. And so, because of that, in a way, you have to kind of unveil a lot. You have to unveil a lot about your characters. Something that I enjoy to do and when writing is that I kind of don't tell the reader much. I don't give the readers much information about the character's backstory until they start talking with their friends or someone they're really close with. A very organic way of kind of talking about what your character is really good at is to kind of focus on what they like to talk about with their friends. Someone who likes writing, let's say, they will obviously, if they really trust their friend, they will, once they finish their book or something, they will go to their friend and immediately talk to them about it. That's something that you kind of have to keep in mind, right? A very kind of dark, a very, very, very dark, you know, thing to talk about, but it actually kind of shows, ignoring what this actually talks about, it shows another thing that you kind of have to think about when writing, which is progression in the moment, I guess is kind of the best term I can think of, which is, in the moment, where does your character emotionally start from and where do they end in the scene, right? Do they start angry, end up calm in the scene? Do they begin sad and end up determined? Well, this is kind of something you have to keep in mind when writing a scene. Where does your character emotionally start and where do they emotionally end? That can be a really strong way to end off a chapter, right? Starting, at the very beginning of the chapter, someone who's, let's say, just bewildered and confused. And yes, I'm talking about something that's I'm trying to write in my book. Someone who, let's say, like wakes up in a hospital bed, bewildered and confused, and through progression, goes from that to, let's say, perhaps just worried about their loved ones, if this is talking about something that happens after like a disaster, and then ends off with kind of this weird sense of, oh my God, what just happened, right? Uh, Progression in the moment, right? That can really tell you a lot about, a character, right? And this is obviously a very dark example of that, but it's kind of something that I thought about when I read this, about character progression in the moment. Yes, this was a big problem I had when I first began writing. Suddenly. Oh boy. This word, I have a long and storied history with this word, suddenly. right? Nowadays, I use it more very, 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 very sparingly. Like where I can, I try to just rip it out and find some other way to, you know, describe a scene as being sudden, right? Other than suddenly, right? There are some good fixes for that, though. Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, this is kind of another thing about writing is that you kind of have to learn like what words you should or should not use, right? Right, because you don't realize this when you first begin writing, but some words are just taboo. You know, they're just words you should not use because they weaken the actual prose of your writing. Suddenly is one of those words. That doesn't mean you absolutely should never use it. Every word has a place. But what do I mean by taboo is I mean it's not a word you should rely on. You should absolutely not rely on the word suddenly. Because first time you use it and it's, let's say, a chapter, it's like, okay. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time you use it, yeah, suddenly you're suddenly your reader is beginning to notice. And when your reader notices something about your writing, like the overusage of a word, yeah, that's usually bad unless you're doing it purposefully, right? Unless you're purposefully drawing attention to a word. Like, I mean, this is actually a good example of that. Like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. That can be a terrifying, that can be a terrifying moment in a horror book. No, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Yeah. So if you're trying to draw attention to a word, uh, try to use it as many times as you think you can without it being annoying. If you're trying not to draw attention to a specific word, use it very, very sparingly.